I read a lot of graphic novels, a lot of comics, and when I read Duncan the Wonder Dog, which took me a while, this is a fairly complex, long work. I can't imagine how long it would have create it. I have never, it's by far and away the most innovative, engaging, and successfully ambitious books I've read in this medium in years. So for me, this was clearly, I felt maybe a sense of awe at times when I read this book, but I also think it's a very challenging book that makes demands on its reader. That is very, I mean, just when you look here, you can see the different kinds of material presence that the book had. You can see what kind of, what he was drawing on. He does collage. He does things like this where he joins the words together. And this is, you know, in juxtaposition with fairly typical panel layout like storytelling. And there's enough going on in this book in terms of form and content. I thought that it was a really remarkable success. And it raises issues about the relationship between humans and animals that are genuinely transformative. I mean, I thought about this book all the time. For weeks after I read it, and I continue to think about the book. And I certainly can't say that about every comic I've ever read, thank God. But for me, this was such a standout book that I feel really fortunate to get a chance to read about and talk about it with the jury.
Yeah, I'd have to second most of what Scott said. I'm a cartoonist, and it's a nice feeling when I open up a comic or a graphic novel and I can't begin to understand how the book was even made. There's so many sort of techniques at work here. I'm still not sure how this book was composed or put together. I can't even begin to think what sort of thought process went through putting these, how you plan this out. I don't know. It just feels as though it exists in this form. And that's a really nice thing to have a book that feels like an object, like an art object, in addition to just some printed material. And what Scott said also, for me, a storyline that's trying to have us reconsider animals and human relationship to animals was something that was really nice for me to read, and is something that's important to me as a human being. Yeah.
I'm sort of an old school comics guy, and I'll confess that when I first picked up Duncan the Wonder Dog, I couldn't even find Duncan in the story. 400 pages of really dense stuff. I actually didn't get it right away, but at the urging of my fellow jurors, I gave it a good second read and read about it and got a better feeling for what was happening here. I think in picking a book, you know, I was looking for something with some real gravitas and something that really moved the medium forward and dealt with subject matter in a unique way. And this book ultimately proved to do that. This guy deconstructs reality and then reassembles it through images, hundreds and hundreds of images, from talking dogs to critters, with hands, to human beings that are absolutely despicable. So it ends up making a statement not just about, animals and the way we treat them, but it's a very interesting, in-depth look at how we think of life on Earth in general and how we all fit together. And I understand this is only volume 1, 8 more to come. So this should be quite something.
Thank you. Hello. I'm really thrilled to look at Duncan the Wonder Dog because I teach actually printmaking. So I teach etching and lithography, and these are these kind of ancient techniques that we don't really use anymore, and I don't see much in modern graphic arts really explored as this person has done. They've obviously had some printing classes because these are, extremely complex ways of making up images. He moves from a photographic image to like an etching kind of line, and he does it sort of seamlessly. He puts in textures, he knows how to create an image. And the one thing about the book is that it's it's hard to get into. It's definitely hard to get into. I remember Jerod was saying he saw it at a comics fair, and he kind of looked at the first pages and then walked by it, and didn't really delve into it. And then he started reading about it, and then he got into it himself, and he was taken away by it. And so it is a difficult book to get in. It's very long, but when you do, it's so rewarding. Look at that drawing. It's really amazing, the way he layers his images, layers his textures, and you know types of line and whatnot. Anyhow, what I was going to say is that it has this kind of gray flatness to it, you know, which makes it sort of difficult to get into. But then after reading some interviews with him, he knew what he was doing. This is a very kind of flat, even-keeled, you know, drawn within sort of book, and it completely works to support.
Yeah, I think too in the art, like with some of these characters, I don't need to talk about that.
Okay.
There's a stillness too in the surface action that goes along with this graphic technique, but it is completely misleading because there's so much going on in the book. There's so much emotional movement. There's so much politics beneath this still surface that the more you read the book, the more you notice these juxtapositions that he's building over hundreds of pages, the more powerful they become, even though the surface level is kind of quiet. Like this character here.
Oh, I'm sorry. This guy, this is pretty much his expression. But I mean, his story is remarkable, and the more you learn of it, the more powerful it becomes. So I think that this book is so highly controlled. That's why I valued it so highly. It's one thing to be ambitious with your form, to try different techniques, to be so utterly successful, I think is not as common. And this pushes the comics medium very far. And I mean, one thing too, I don't want to take over, but obviously I'm totally excited about this book. This character here is one or another monkey. This book is not simplistic, saying humans do horrible things to animals, we should feel guilty and never eat chicken, right? It's not the message of the book. I mean, there are animals across the moral and ethical spectrum, just as human beings too. And the book is always challenging. That's one thing I love about it so much. And I always wondered what was going on with the cover of this book. Can you show the cover? Like, I saw this cover, I thought, I don't get the cover. But today I think I get it. Right? What is this thing a picture of? Right, but the structure of the face is entirely human at the same time, right? And I think that he is trying to collapse that clean, convenient division between the animal and the human in this book in so many different ways. So just good job. And his name's not on the cover or it's fine anywhere. It only shows up in the copyright in this tiny thing. So he effaces his own authorship from the book. Anyway, John.
I'll just say something briefly. Those animal characters, some you can't even understand. The way the birds talk to each other is totally unique. It's like not the way that the humans might communicate, and they do their own thing, and it gives them their own personality as a species. And I think like saying that it goes beyond sort of the speciesist boundary is not saying too much about it.